With that being said, guys, it is time to transition this call. So we have just had a phenomenal evening, but it's time for you to understand the why behind the what. It's time for you to hear from a gentleman that has a PhD in finance and economics, a consultant, an educator, a CFO, a life coach, someone who's dedicated his life to making sure that he has the information, the knowledge, and passing it forward and paying it forward so you are empowered. So I am honored to turn this call over to the one and only, yes, the one and the only finance doctor, Dr. Craig Bythewood. Dr. B, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Miss Tasha M. Dyer. Thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction. Now I just feel pressure. How am I going to meet those expectations? JK. So welcome everyone to a talk with the finance doctor, your RX for Forex. I am aware that many of you, or I should change that to some of you, are 111ers, and for anybody watching the video at a future time, 111 simply means that an individual is on this call for the first time. So just a very quick breakdown of what this call is about. The visionary of this movement, Mr. Gerald D. Rogers, named this call a talk with the finance doctor, understanding the power of that preposition with. Because every other educator or every other forum, it's done in a way where we are helping you to break down the trades, break down the charts, break down understanding of the market. Therefore, the best methodology is to ask questions in the chat. But this is a with. So it is a conversation. It is a dialogue. So the way in which you want to address this call is that if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a testimony, please make the red diagonal in the lower left-hand side of your rectangle disappear and do what I refer to as walk in the power of the unmuted microphone. We've been doing these calls for a while. I believe Ms. Dyer said it was approaching 3 years, and it is. And the best calls, the best conversations have been when someone asks a question, because here's why. When you ask a question, you now take my agenda and you tailor it to something that's going on in your life. And when you ask a question, someone else has the same question or didn't know they had the same question, and they benefit from what you say. And then the final thing I want to say in preparation for this call is that what I just described to you is beneficial for this reason. We're talking about trading. We're talking about mindset. We're talking about macroeconomics. We're talking about personal financial planning. And personal finance is, in fact, the only area of our society where the individuals who provide you information about the products just happen to be the same people who sell you the products. So that provides an incentive for you and I to take advantage of this forum to discuss matters of personal finance. So for the 111ers and beyond, welcome to a talk with the finance doctor, your RX for Forex. You know, I very seldom break down that subtitle, but let's do that too. Your RX for Forex. The rationale there is this. In the traditional healthcare scenario where we're symptom focused and we want to provide you some type of medicinal support to address the symptom and give you a short-term solution to what may be going on, they will take their little pad and they'll write down a prescription. You take that prescription and then you use that prescription to get some relief from whatever's going on. So we'll just leave our opinions about that process there and just focus on the analogy. Your RX for Forex is simply addressing a truth, a fundamental truth. There's a lot of energy associated with money. If you think about the relationship you have with money, it probably began in childhood. You probably observed some conversations. You probably heard some dialogues that may not have been positive between the caretakers of your life. You may have had some very large ideas of what you wanted to do. And when those ideas involve money, you may have heard some very stringent conversations. You may have heard some beliefs that may have triggered in you a certain way of viewing money, or a certain pressure, or a certain lack mentality. Now, lack is not saying anything about the person. Lack just means that you're addressing something from the perspective of not having. Let me say that again. Lack just means that you're simply addressing something from the perspective of not having. And oftentimes, in the way in which our world is presented, the way we process information, the way movies are written, the way TV shows are produced, the way the news gives you information, the way people talk, the way people post, oftentimes we are more apt to look at the negative side of things. We're more apt to talk about what we don't have and what we don't do and what we haven't done, rather than what we have. So I'm saying all that to say this. Some of us come to the table with some economic wounds. So a call like this is an opportunity for us to have some dialogue, to have some conversation, to admit some things, to be real about some things, so that we can provide a congruence between the trading, the mindset, the economy, the personal financial management, and all the things we need to do to get what we rightfully deserve. And that is wealth and abundance. There's so many times in this book I read sometimes where it talks about the fact that we're expected to have wealth. And it's interesting that oftentimes when ministers are talking about having money, possessing assets, being wealthy, we'll label them as prosperity preachers, as if that's something that is an issue. And I remember listening to a particular sermon recently by a pastor in Houston, Texas. His name is, I forgot his name. His last name is Hilliard. So Pastor something Hilliard. And he was talking about the fact that he was in a group of pastors, and he was talking about the fact that we should teach more prosperity training, more abundance training, more what can you do to get what God has for you. And he said that many of the ministers in there said that abundance training isn't for everyone. And I found that very interesting. And it's okay, because we operate in the law of allowing. We allow people to think what they want to think. We allow people to be who they are. But we also want to take advantage of opportunities like this to show people a different way of thinking, to show people a different way of analyzing, to show people a different way of addressing things. So let's take those words and let's remix it to this. Abundance can be for everybody. It can be for everybody. I oftentimes reflect on this. The way our society works, there has to be a certain class that is going to do the things that the wealthy needs done. So I would never suggest that a person should stay at a certain point so that we could have the individuals to wash our cars, or have the individuals to mow our lawns, or have the individuals to wait on tables. I would never suggest that, because sometimes people are just in that mindset on their own. I mentioned this a couple of calls ago. Actually, I think I mentioned this on our radio show. Most welfare recipients are fourth generation welfare recipients. So that does not mean that the families are saying, hey, we want to stay on welfare. What that means is that there's a particular energy, a particular way of doing things that gets passed on from generation to generation. And at any point, anybody in those families can decide, I'd like to do this. I want more. I want to be something special. I want to operate in Proverbs 10 and 28, that the Lord says we shall be wealthy and add no sorrow to it. But sometimes we add sorrow to it. We got to be real about that. Sometimes we add sorrow to it with our mindsets, with our beliefs, with our generational pressures, What's a generational pressure? Well, sometimes we have to be real about the fact that there are scenarios that happen in the generation before us, or the generation before that, or the generation before that, that affect us. And it's been a while since I've told this story, so I'm going to tell it again. If somebody has already heard this, that's great. We learn by repetition. There was a study done, and the study was called the Cherry Blossom Study. And this is what they did in the Cherry Blossom Study. They took laboratory mice and they fed them cherry blossoms. And when they fed the mice cherry blossoms, every time they would eat the cherry blossom, they would shock them. Eat the cherry blossom, shock. Eat the cherry blossom, shock. So eventually, the mice began to identify the taste of cherry blossoms with an electrical shock. So you can imagine what happened. They obviously were not interested in cherry blossoms anymore, because although it was a taste that they enjoyed, they weren't willing to deal with the pain associated with that. Wow, did I just say something I didn't think I was going to say? How many of us are so used to doing things in a certain way? How many of us are so used to doing things in a certain way? How many of us have so many beliefs that have been passed on that we do things that we know are painful, but we keep doing them? That's another talk with the finance doctor. So back to the point of the study. So what they did, what the experimenters did, was they took the children of the mice, and then they took the grandchildren of the mice, in other words, the grand mice, and they did not feed the children cherry blossoms. They didn't do any experiments on the children. They went right to the grand mice. They took the grand mice, watch this. They took the grand mice and they introduced the smell of cherry blossoms. And when they introduced the smell of cherry blossoms, the grand mice began to have all kind of reactions. Now I want you to hear me. The grandparent mice, they got shocked. The children of the mice did not get shocked. The grand mice did not get shocked. But just the smell of the cherry blossom was so ingrained in their DNA that they had the same physical reactions that they would have had they been shocked. So what does that study prove? What does the cherry blossom study prove? It proves that there's some real rationale, there's some real brilliance in us calling this call your RX for FOREX. Because you and I have some economic wounds that are passed on from generation to generation, and we don't even realize it. So what's the point? Am I supposed to go and try to find out what happened in my past? Of course not. You just want to understand that you are going to have to really take this personal mastery seriously, that you're really going to have to do things. Because watch this. There's somebody right now on this call. There's somebody listening to my voice right now, and you're resonating with what I'm saying. What I just said made you realize, wow, that's why I go through that. That's why I've experienced that. But yet, when you have opportunities like when the call starts and Miss Dyer or Miss Anderson or Miss Brantley, when they say, type your affirmations in the chat, you do like this. You get on your phone. I'll be glad when they start the call. Let me check Instagram before they start the call. So you have an opportunity to take these unknown, invisible beliefs that you've never even seen before, that you didn't even know existed. You have an opportunity. Hey, how do you get rid of an old belief? The way you get rid of an old belief is to replace it with a new belief. That's what you're doing when you affirm. Oh yeah, I'm gonna learn this skill set, but I won't do those affirmations. I'm not gonna do that stuff. Okay, I hear you. But if you want to reverse some of your cherry blossoms, that could be the way. Now hear me. Dr. B is not saying that is the way to get rid of your DNA and your generational scenarios. What Dr. B is saying is that when you have opportunities to take your old beliefs and create new beliefs with them, are you taking advantage of it? Are you taking advantage of it? Now, this morning on our 9 a.m. call, Ms. Dyer was breaking down the US 30. And she was talking about the manner in which you want to analyze what's happening after the bell. And she was discussing the pros and cons of doing what you're doing versus waiting. And she talked about why she would wait in order to take this trade. And someone someone put in the chat, it's a good thing I'm on this call, because if I was by myself, I wouldn't have waited. It's a good thing I'm on this call, because if I wasn't on this call, I would have waited. Now, maybe I'm just a little corny when it comes to situations like that, but I got excited. I got hyped. I got amped, because that is a concept. That is what Dr. Craig Bythewood, no middle name, means when he says the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness is a fancy quantum physics way of describing the fact that when you get energies together, those energies align and those energies match, and those matching energies have power. And there's more power in multiple energies than there is one. That book that I read sometimes, Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. Matthew chapter 18, verse 20 says, where 2 or 3 shall gather, I shall be in the midst. That's collective consciousness. People kill me how they get so dogmatic sometimes, and they say, well, when you say this, it's against that. And when you say this, you should say that. And in reality, it's all the same. There's one world here, and we're all together in it. You ever think about the word universe means? What's a unitard? Y'all know I got a unitard in my closet. That's a one piece, a onesie. That's a unitard. What's a unicycle? One wheel. What's a unibrow? One eyebrow. So uni means one, university. So what is a verse? It's a song. It's a song. So you and I think, really overdo the concept of disagreement. I said this to a good friend of mine one time. What if disagreement was an illusion? What if it didn't exist? What if there's no such thing as a disagreement? What if I just hear you, and then you just hear me, and then you allow me to be me, and I allow you to be you, and we do that in unison? Then technically there's never a reason to say that. And we're so quick. We're so quick to say, well, I disagree. What are you disagreeing about? And this has happened a lot. I'll say something, and then the person will say, well, I disagree. And then they'll say their part. And what they just said, the same thing I just said. So we're just so, Miss Brantley made a reference on Wednesday to the Westerns and how quick we are to just, that might have been a recording, but it doesn't matter. Miss Brantley made a comment about the Westerns, how quick you gotta be quick draw. Same thing when Miss Dyer says your reaction time, gotta be quick draw. Sometimes we're just so quick to draw that disagree. Well, I disagree. Do you really? Because if we really want to walk in our power, we'll understand the beauty of what's going on right here. So watch this. I'm sitting in my house, and I am on a software that allows me to speak to multiple people. I see a rectangle to the left of me, it's Tiny Anderson. I see a rectangle to the side, the right of me, it says Tasha M. Dyer. And I see all of these rectangles, and there's a little arrow right here. And if I hit the arrow, I see more rectangles. And I hit the arrow again, I see more rectangles. Sherry Contaldo, Stephanie Hall, LG Stylo, Kathy's iPhone, Lady T, Tracy Brown. You know Tracy cool. There's no such thing as a mean Tracy. You ever met a mean Tracy? No, Tracy's always cool. Tracy Brown. So all I'm saying is we have an opportunity to talk about things, but do it in a way where all of these energies are together. Jesus said, am I allowed to say on this call? Jesus said, these things I do, ye shall do as well. So what he was saying is, yo, I got this power. I'm the son of God. I'm spirit manifested. But all this stuff I do, all these miracles, all this power, all this healing, he's telling you straight up, you can do it too. I'm short term. I'm only going to be around for 3 years. But you could do this for 103 years. So if we gather together and we do it in one song, singing the same song, this universe allows us an opportunity to have more power. So when the person put that in the chat, if I was by myself, I wouldn't have waited. If I was by myself, I would have done something different. But you're not. You're not by yourself because we've decided to offer you 40 opportunities for you to be able to speak, 40 opportunities for you to be able to listen, 40 opportunities a month for you to be able to plug in. So let me just for a second say something. Let me be real for a second. Yes, Miss Harvey, who is violating all the talk with the finance doctor rules, just asked me if I read the book Silver Mind Control Method by Jose Silva. Yes. And she asked me, do I study with Mind Valley? Yes, I'm a Mind Valley member. So, but I don't think that those two things are enough to say to reach my understanding. I think we're talking about 30 years of study. We're talking about 30 years of experience. We're talking about 20 years of being a life coach. We're talking about studying the world in a way where I want to understand how people operate so that I can be the best contributor to the planet I can be. So yes, I've done those two things, but that's, in my opinion, only been a small slice of the pie. Good question, even though you should have unmuted to ask me that. So my point is this. Sometimes we need to really be grateful. You ever notice how I end all my prayers with, we are thankful, we are appreciative. Ooh, can I say it correctly? We are thankful, we are appreciative, and we are grateful. I do that by design because I feel that the strongest energy that exists in our world is appreciation. Now somebody said, well, I think love is. Yeah, I hear you. But you can love somebody and still be defensive. You can love somebody and still be a jerk. But if you are in appreciation, that to me is the strongest energy. Because if I'm in appreciation, I'm going to love you better. I'm going to love you differently. I'm going to look at the good in you. I'm going to look at the Christ in you, and I'm going to operate that way. So I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were having an issue with their hair. Obviously, I had to be talking to some, you know, sometimes people say it was a friend, but it really was them. You know, it wasn't me. So I'm talking to somebody, and they had an issue with their hair. So after they went through all the issues, issue, then they said, but you know what? I can be thankful because I have hair. And there are people that don't. It wasn't an attack against me. I would have said that, but it wasn't an attack against me. They were just saying, I need to be thankful. And oftentimes, we get so caught up in the energy of complaining that we don't even realize that all we have to do is shift our energy to appreciation and everything changes. So just for a second, let's just pause and let's just think about what's going on here. The person put in the chat, if I had to do it alone, things would be different. Do y'all realize that there was a time when you had to do it alone? Do y'all realize that when I Am Academy started, there was one educator and it was Christopher Terry? Do you realize that when the BYOB calls started, there were just 2 calls? Do you realize that we've added profit calls? Do you realize that we made Tuesday night calls for beginners and we made Thursday night calls for tools? Do you realize that we have refined the system to make it so that we provide as much counsel as possible and we listen to you? I know I tell y'all all the time, I listen to the chat. I listen to the chat. Well, how can you listen to the chat? I don't read the chat. I listen to the chat. I feel the chat and I bring the chat to my call. So we have a team of educators that is so aligned with what we feel you need. And watch this. We recognize that we're good and we care, but we also recognize that we don't know it all. So there's this forum that we have which addresses that. And it's called, are there any questions, comments, or testimonies? Every single time we have a call, somebody says, are there any questions, comments, and testimonies? Now, I've been saying that since I was a 27-year-old professor. I started teaching at 26. When I was 27, I started saying, are there any questions, comments, testimonies? I've had people email me and say, they say that on their job, or they say it in board meetings, or they say it in staff meetings. Are there any questions, comments, testimonies? Now watch this. Y'all probably don't know this. I used to say, are there any questions, comments, concerns, and testimonies? Because that was before I realized that, as Ms. Dyer says all the time, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so if I bring up concerns, that word is tight. That word makes your shoulders tight. So I took out concerns. Now, of course, if somebody has one, they can ask, but I labeled it in a way where we're gonna say what we wanna say productive. What's your question? What's your comment? What's your testimony? In order to have a testimony, you have to go through a test. So I took out the word concern, and for the last 25 years, 25 out of 27, it's been any questions, comments, or testimonies. So what I'm saying to you is this. I think we should pause and be thankful for what the Be Your Own Bank movement offers. And I didn't even mention what we do on Monday night. I didn't even mention what we do Tuesday night at 7:30. What I'm talking about is that we have created a very strong scenario to address everything that you have. Then we've taken everything we've done and we've recorded it and put it on YouTube. So here's my point. My point is, it will be easy to point to something we're not doing. Hey, y'all not doing this. Hey, y'all not doing this. Hey, y'all not doing this. You should do that. You could say that. And every single thing you would say would be true. But what if we instead recognize the power of the collective consciousness? What if we realize that what we're really doing is Matthew 18 and 20 in this thing? What we're really doing is saying, if we come together as a team, if we come together as a unit, we can accomplish more. We have more power. If I was by myself, I wouldn't have done that. So if you have a complaint about what we're doing, if you have a complaint about how we're doing it, I honor that. I honor that. I'm simply suggesting that you shift your energy to being grateful, being thankful, and being appreciative of all the things that we do. And I personally think we do this well. I've been an educator my whole life. And I think that the education that's provided here is outstanding. I say this all the time. People vote with their feet. Now, yesterday I showed y'all my line. Tuesday, I showed y'all my line. I don't know if you recognize it, but underneath the line, there are two basketball pictures. They're the pictures of my squads that I've coached over the years. And the youngest grade I've ever taught or coached is 5th grade. Now, 5th grade is a very interesting grade to coach because at that time, especially for girls, they've been doing other things those first however many years. They've been interested in other activities. So now then they decide they want to play basketball, they're athletic, but they don't necessarily have the fundamentals. So the first thing I have to teach the fifth grader is how not to travel. Okay, ladies, y'all need to know what this means because y'all are picking up the ball and y'all are running all over the place. So here's what you do. You pick up the ball and you choose a foot. So whichever foot you choose, ladies, put that foot down. Now point to the foot. They point to it. I said, that foot right there, that foot doesn't move. Now I said, now move the other foot. They just moved up. They love doing that exercise. They just move the foot. I said, that foot that doesn't move, that foot is called a pivot foot. Now, here's what you do, fifth grader. Every time you put that foot and you point to it and you designate it as your pivot foot, you use that to change direction. Your pivot is what you use to change direction. So I'm going to say it again. I honor your freedom to have a complaint. I honor your freedom to think we should do something differently. But I know that all you have to do is pivot. Because the 1, 2, 3 things you could say about the way we deliver the education, there are 500 things you can say about what we do right and how good we get it and what you can do and how you can. And did I even mention that it's free? Did I even mention that? You know what? Yeah, I don't know why y'all keep bringing up inflation, but I'll go ahead and talk about it since y'all keep bringing it up. All right. Can Dr. B just be real for a second? This Miss Brownlee's gonna call me transparent again. There's a candy that I like at my corner store, and it costs 25 cents. I'm not gonna tell you the candy because it's a ghetto candy and you'll judge me. 25 cents, and there's no tax on it because it's a food. So I got a spare quarter and I'm driving by my corner store. I will run in there and get that piece of candy because I like that ghetto candy. I went in today to buy the ghetto candy. And I said, oh, I got 3 quarters. So let me go ahead and get 3 of them. So I put my little 75 cent on the table and the dude said, oh, that'll be $1.68. I said, what? It costs a quarter. He said, oh, no, they're 39 cents now. Are you serious? That's almost a 100% increase. So I am so glad that instead of complaining about the price of an item, I can just come to my BYOB family and know that because we're a collective, because we're together, because we are finding ways to do things where we don't have to be alone, we can learn a skill set, we can have wealth and abundance, and we can make the price of the candy not matter. I'm being honest. Look at everybody trying to know what the ghetto candy is. So I got punched in the stomach. Ooh, 39 cents for a 25 cent candy? So I would have bought one. I would have bought one. That's not the point. The point is we should be thankful. We should be appreciative. We should be grateful. It is okay and appropriate to express whatever complaint we have. But after we do that, we got to pivot. And we have to look at all of the beautiful, wonderful things that the BYOB movement provides. Because when we are going to approach 2 million people and financially, economically educate them, empower them, we have to do that in the right energy. And we do that by pivoting to thankfulness, appreciation, and gratefulness rather than any other energy. This has been a talk with the finance doctor, you nosy ghetto candy asking movementeers. So any real questions for the BYOBers other than what my mystery ghetto candy is? Questions, comments, testimony. Okay, it's grape heads and apple heads. I don't do lemon heads. I like grape heads and apple heads. Only certain stores sell that. So boom, now you know. Questions, comments, judges. It used to be called Alexander the Great. Now it's called grape heads. Questions, comments, testimonies. Oh, thank you for that, Ms. Anderson. That makes me feel less judged. Questions, comments, testimonies. I know I went a little over, but y'all got me talking about ghetto candy. It was
Again.
25 cents. It was 25 cents last week. Now it's 40 cents. Questions, comments, testimonies.
Again, we just want to thank you for your transparency. And we just love you, Dr. Bythewood. Thank you so much.
Browning. Thank you for giving me an unconditional, non-judgmental shout out. That's what's up. Questions?
Dr. B,
yes.
it went up because you kept buying it.
Oh, you gonna supply and demand me now? I've been paying a quarter for that since I lived here.
Keep buying it, so we're gonna go up on the price.
I have been buying that candy since I moved here in 2007, and it's never gone up. All right, it's not about me and my candy. Questions, comments, testimonies. Thank you for that, Mr. Jones. Lando, bring that to our next call because that's not an end of call type of question. It's also a little too general. All right, one more time. Any questions, comments, testimonies?
I know we'll never forget this lesson because we all remember the candy. So that's a great tie-in. So that's so valuable. Thank you for always bringing so much value.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ms. Anderson. That's love. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end this call in prayer. So Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us an opportunity to speak about the topics we spoke about. And hopefully this will allow all of us to do a better job of walking in our power, of appreciating the power of this group, and doing everything in our power to make a better life for ourselves, our family, and future generations. Heavenly Father, please allow us to continue to operate in the law of allowing, always allowing people to be who they are and loving them unconditionally. We are thankful, we are appreciative, and we are grateful. Amen. Okay, everyone, have a great Thursday night, and this will officially end this call.